What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And the New York Giants made some massive upgrades to their front seven this offseason. Of course, we all know the big blockbuster acquisition of Brian Burns from the Carolina Panthers. That was the big trade that the Giants made at the start of free agency. He's joining in on this front seven alongside Kayvon Thibodeau, who had a massive breakout in year two. And of course, Dexter Lawrence, one of the best, if not the best, interior defensive lineman in the NFL. Plus, if you want to take it to that next level, how about that linebacker core? Pretty solid with Bobby Okereke, one of the most underrated players in the NFL in our opinion and in the opinion of PFF. Plus, Micah McFadden really growing into his own, and even Isaiah Simmons gives the Giants decent depth at inside linebacker. Plus, I didn't even mention Azeez Ojulari on the edge, more solid depth. Look at this Giants front seven. This is one of the best units that we've seen them have in a very long time. There's a lot of talent. There's solid depth. The high-end talent is really good. All of that fun stuff that we want to talk about in today's episode, just discussing that this Giants front seven could be special in 2024. So as they kick off OTAs, we get a little bit of an update here about Daniel Jones. Sounds like he's definitely going to be ready for the start of training camp. That's a good sign for the New York Giants, who are banking on Jones to take that year 6 leap and be their starter this upcoming season. But on the defensive side of the ball, that's where we want to focus in today's episode. But before we dive into all that, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening to Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And how are you feeling about this Giants defensive line heading into 2024?
I'm doing pretty good, and OTA starting up today. Things are getting going. Summer's rolling around. The weather's getting nicer. What more can you ask for? Football season is right around the bend. And this defensive line obviously was a priority for Joe Schoen, the general manager, and the coaching staff this offseason. We love Andre Patterson. Honestly, don't know why he hasn't been more involved in helping some of these outside linebackers. Just look at what he's done with guys like Everson Griffin and Daniil Hunter. The fact that he wasn't really working, they had the Wilkins brothers doing most of the outside linebacker work. Get Andre Patterson involved. Let him get his paws on Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau and Azeez Ojulari. Let him coach them. He can make them great. And I'd love to see more influence from him there. So that's kind of where I'd like to focus on the coaching staff portion of it. But this defensive line has more than enough talent to be one of the best in the business. And you look at the acquisition of Brian Burns, a lot of people will point to he's not that good against the run. Maybe he wasn't, he was inconsistent at times, but he's I think what we hope Kayvon Thibodeau becomes. You know what I mean? That's kind of the way that the best way I could describe it. He's got that size, he's got that motor, he's got that kind of the intangibles too. I think that we would love for Kayvon Thibodeau to become as good as Brian Burns. And I love the fact that he'll take a lot of pressure off of Kayvon Thibodeau to be the number one guy. Last year, Kayvon had to step up in big moments, had to go up against some of the best in the game. And, he was getting beat up on a lot of times against better teams. And I think he dominated against some worse teams, and he showed some really good flashes of quality, but it wasn't every single game. And that's where we look to guys like Brian Burns to say, he's got to make an impact play every single game. That's what guys like TJ Watt do. That's what JJ Watt did. This is what some of the best pass rushers in football do. Dexter Lawrence is one of those guys. When you need him the most, he shows up to play. Brian Burns is one of those guys. He shows up to play against good teams. He shows up to play in the spotlight. And Kayvon Thibodeau wants to be like that. And I think him going up against number twos and the weaker side of the offensive line, that is where he will shine. And he'll start to get confident, and he'll start to gain that kind of mental fortitude to be able to win against the top guns, the top guys in the NFL. And Brian Burns is going to take a lot of pressure off of Kayvon, but I also think Dexter Lawrence is going to soak up so many double teams. You're going to have a lot of 1v1 scenarios. You're going to have to run a lot of stunts. You're going to be able to get creative. This is going to be a different defensive scheme, just in the sense that it's not going to be so reliant on Wink Martindale would send safeties and linebackers and position players. He would just send them all, and it actually was heavily reliant on those sub packages rather than 1v1 matchups. Kayvon and Azeez or whoever was playing on the outside, it was very much relying on other guys to produce pressure, not so much the edge rushers. I think this is going to be a much different scenario where they go and get Shane Bowen in the priority. They've already said verbatim, we're going to let the pass rushers rush. We're going to let them do their job. And I'm excited about that, Anthony. I think you made some really good points last season. We were watching the tape, watching these games. We were like, why are they not as active as you want them to be? Why is Kayvon Thibodeau a decoy? Why is he dropping into coverage sometimes? There were things that just did not make sense to us. This is going to look different. What are you expecting from this new dynamic duo that the Giants have put in place here in Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau? How do you think they support one another. They've been hanging out, fishing, getting to know each other, getting chemistry off the field. You love to see that early on. They're becoming friends already. I think that this could be one of the more special defensive line we've seen over the last decade for the Giants. We had some really good seasons when we had Dalvin Tomlinson, and you remember Snacks, and you remember Olivier Vernon for a year or two. We had some good players, but nothing truly dominant. Do you think this line could be dominant?
Yeah, I think that it could be dominant. I want to get back to your original question, though, about this duo between Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeaux. One of the things that I think is most exciting for the Giants is that this is a healthy duo. Now, they've really struggled over the last 2 years to maintain their pass rushing prowess due to the fact that Azeez Ojulari has struggled to maintain his health. Azeez Ojulari has been injured rather often, which has kept him out of the lineup and really forced the Giants to only have one capable starter on the edge. You had Kayvon Thibodeaux for the last 2 years on the edge. Opposite him, Azeez Ojulari was supposed to be there. And guys, Azeez Ojulari is a pretty good pass rusher, but you can't be that great if you're not on the field. Oftentimes, availability is the best ability. But how about Brian Burns? Throughout his career, 2019, 16 games played. Then he had 15, then 17, then 16, then 16. Very rarely does Brian Burns miss time due to an injury or other ailment, so you can expect him to be on the field and be healthy this season, knock on wood. If he is healthy, and if Kayvon Thibodeaux is healthy, that gives the Giants two solid pass rushers who are both playing at a high level on a week-by-week basis. Now again, last year the Giants sometimes had two edge rushers playing at a high level on a week-to-week basis. However, it wasn't really every single week consistently due to those injuries. But now you've got those two guys who are relatively healthy, who have proven to be able to stay in shape and keep themselves on the field, and that gives the Giants a lot more continuity week to week and a lot more consistency from their pass rushing group. And I think that there's going to be a big trickle-down effect from the addition of Brian Burns. So, of course, last year, Kayvon Thibodeaux was edge one for the Giants, the primary pass rusher. He faced a lot of double teams. Offense is really keyed in on him and tried to slow him down as a pass rusher. As a result, maybe he wasn't super productive in every game. But now with Brian Burns being that guy that the offenses are keying in on, now they're paying just a little bit less attention to Brian Burns, or to Kayvon Thibodeaux rather. And then that moves down the line. Okay, so now Azeez Ojulari is edge 3. Even less attention paid to him. How do you block all three of those guys at once? You have to leave at least one of them, probably two of them, in a one-on-one pass rushing opportunity. And Azeez Ojulari, like I said, when he's been healthy, has been very productive, especially in those one-on-one pass rushing opportunities. Thibodeaux has been productive in one-on-one pass rushing opportunities, though he hasn't faced a ton of them. Brian Burns will soak up double teams. He will open up those one-on-ones for those other guys. It'll make them more productive. So, not only is Burns stepping in and adding the productivity that he's shown throughout the entirety of his career, he's creating more production for other guys just by simply being on the football field and being on the football field in high volumes because he doesn't get hurt much. So it's a really important trickle-down effect that you're going to see from Brian Burns to Thibodeaux to Ojulari, and I think that's something to be really excited about. Now, Alex, if there is one weak point, though, I think it's good to talk about the good and the bad on this Giants defensive line. If there is one weak point, I think it's on the interior. Again, Dexter Lawrence, arguably the best interior defensive lineman in the NFL. But opposite him, who's the other starter on the interior? Big question for the Giants going into the summer. It'll probably get sorted out throughout OTAs, training camp. Whichever D lineman practices the best and earns that starting job will then play alongside Dexter Lawrence. But who do you think that's going to be, Alex? Because I know you're pretty high on a pair of Giants defensive linemen here, DJ Davidson and Jordan Riley. Tell me why you like those guys, why you're excited about them, and why maybe you don't view the interior of the defensive line to be as big of a weakness as I might.
Well, I do think that, I know we've said this a million times, the Giants need their guys to develop. They need some of their projects to pan out. I trust Andre Patterson as one of those coaches that can help get max value out of mid to late round picks. And DJ Davidson was pretty solid before he got injured. Jordan Riley, that was he a 7th round pick? I see his upside being like Dalvin Tomlinson-esque, really good run stopper, big body, soak up double teams. Not going to offer you much as a pass rusher, but he can really help you just lock down the interior, allow the other guys to do the pass rushing. You don't have to have a pass rusher at every single position, right? Leonard Williams is a luxury. He can rush the passer and he can stop the run at a high level. Dexter Lawrence, luxury. You can't have luxuries at every single position. Brian Burns is a luxury. Kayvon Thibodeaux, if he gets to where you want him to be, is a luxury. Dexter Lawrence, obviously one of the best players in football. So, if you get average production from Jordan Riley or DJ Davidson, you're happy with that for now. Not to mention Raheem Nunez-Roche, solid veteran, can at least step in and offer you good presence. He's had a couple years where he's been decent, collected some pass rush stats. You have 3 guys competing for that starting job now. All of them have the upside to start. I think that's a good scenario to be in. You can't have bona fide stars at every single position. I know you agree with that. Like, it's impossible for the most part. In secondary, we're going to see the same thing unfold at CB2. Trey Hawkins, Cordell Flott, Nick McLeod. You're going to see these guys competing for the starting job. Same thing at the secondary DT spot with those 3 guys. What do you think about that competition battle? Who do you think emerges from the woodwork? Do you think Raheem Nunez-Roche gets that starting just because of the experience? Or do you think that maybe one of those young guys actually sneaks into the job there?
Well, I think that Nacho Raheem Nunez-Roches is probably going to get the first crack at the starting gig. He has the experience, he is a veteran, and he's played well at times in the NFL. But long term, he's not necessarily the solution. So I do think the Giants will try and get some of those young guys on the field as often as they can. I thought that Jordan Riley showed a lot of promise in the preseason. In week 1, he had a terrific tackle for loss against the Dallas Cowboys that I thought was going to earn him more playing time. But then he wasn't even in the lineup. He was a healthy scratch in week 2 and for many of the games last season, which was surprising to me. I would think that young player who's flashed potential before, get him on the field, get him developing. Giants kind of dropped the ball on that one, in my opinion. So I'd like to see more Jordan Riley this season. Hopefully he plays well during the summer and gets that opportunity. But again, it's all predicated on how he does in those practice drills and how he looks based on his skill level versus the competition that the Giants have on this roster. Now, DJ Davidson played quite a bit last year. He did get injured. I think it was in that game against Arizona. Don't quote me on that. But he played well in spurts as well, although he necessarily wasn't perfect. And I think that the Giants, again, still have room to improve this position throughout the summer. Maybe they do sign somebody or make some sort of last-minute acquisition. But I think that DJ Davidson and Jordan Riley rotating in there with Raheem Nunez-Roches, like you said, you don't necessarily need 2 excellent starters in those defensive line spots. You've got Dexter Lawrence, that's great. Now next to them, you just need average quality. I think you make a good point there. And we'll see if there's a way to get average quality performances with that rotation of those 3 guys. That might be the way that the Giants do this. But let's move into that second level, Alex, and talk about these linebackers, because this Giants linebacker duo of Bobby Okereke and Micah McFadden is probably the best one that many Giants fans in the younger age demographic have ever seen. Because it's been like 10 years since the Giants have had a linebacker who's as good as Bobby Okereke, and Micah McFadden is pretty good in his own right. How are you feeling about that inside linebacker core with those 2 guys? Of course, you still have Isaiah Simmons. You still have that 6th-round draft pick out of UCLA, who I can't say his name, that the Giants took this year. How are you feeling about this linebacker group? Because honestly, I do think it is one of the best that the Giants have had over the last 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, this just Bobby Okereke alone makes that statement true. He is the epitome of consistent. He's a leader. He's a great guy. Like, he's a giant, man. Like, he is what you want a giant to be. The guy has a nonstop motor. He plays through injuries. He's tough as nails. He's not afraid of the spotlight. He's not afraid of the big moment. He's the type of player you wish you had, 52 of, right? Like, that's kind of where I look at Bobby Okereke and I'm like, I wish we could freaking replicate him at every position. But looking at Micah McFadden, I'm a McFadden fan, personally. I know some people are a little bit on the fence about him, but the reason I like McFadden is because that dude is aggressive, and he makes plays. The Giants need playmakers. I like Isaiah Simmons, too. Really good guy that can step in as a versatile weapon, utilize him in coverage, utilize him to just help stop the run. He was sideline to sideline last year. He was a good asset for us, a really good LB3, really, and the guy you can put in sub packages, too. So, you look at kind of Micah McFadden, though, the 20.7% missed tackle rate stands out, and you say to yourself, well, yeah, that's really freaking high, but you have to add context to that missed tackle rate, right? He is one of those linebackers that shoots the gaps. He's one of those guys that identifies holes in the blocking scheme, and he exposes them. He's a second too late sometimes, but sometimes, and you kind of said this in the last time we talked about him, just because he misses those tackles doesn't mean he doesn't make an impact on that play. Sometimes he misses those tackles, but he trips up the running back and allows your defenders to rally around the guy and stop him for a loss. Or maybe he only gets 1 or 2 yards instead of 5 or 6 yards. So even though he's missing them, maybe it's a net positive, right? But again, when he does get them, you're talking about now you're second and long, or you're third and long, or something happens. Maybe it's a third and short, and he shoots the gap and he stops, and they got a punt. Those type of moments win you games. You know what I mean? It's a game of inches. Those type of plays are impact plays. Now I hope that he can be just a split second earlier, or maybe even just improve his tackling fundamentals slightly to wrap them up and take them down and protect himself from potentially that guy, running through the gap and nobody being there to stop him because he's left his zone. That may be a place where I see him trying to improve upon. He is useless in coverage, so like there is definitely a liability there, but you're not using him to be in coverage. You're using him to stop the run, shoot the gaps, and get after the passer. From that position, Bobby Okereke is a little bit better in that regard in terms of being in coverage. So he had a couple of games where he was just insane in run defense, against the Buffalo Bills last year, against Washington, the Jets, Las Vegas. He had a ridiculous game. This is a player that when he's not missing tackles, and it's kind of funny, Anthony, if you look at his grades, if you look at his production in the games that he missed the fewest amount of tackles, he had the best grades, right? So he had, this is great, man. This is a really good situation. If you're the Giants and you say to yourselves, if we can reduce that missed tackle rate, you're kind of seeing the production skyrocket, the grades skyrocket, the value skyrocket. So I see it there. I see the upside. I love Micah McFadden. Love that aggression. He's a giant. That's what the giant linebackers just do, man. Like I hope he can kind of, become more efficient and balanced in other ways. But he's our starting LB2 and 5th round draft pick, man. Like these are the type of guys, projects, gotta pan out, gotta make an impact. He has 1 or 2 elite traits. That's what you love to find in those late round draft picks, and you love to maximize their talent.
Yeah, totally agreed with you. It's these late round guys that make the impact long term for the New York Giants. So, on top of guys like Brian Burns, big blockbuster acquisition, Dexter Lawrence, a first round pick, Kayvon, a first round pick, Okereke, an expensive signing in free agency, you need some homegrown talent to pan out. So, not only McFadden, but I would love to see Jordan Riley pan out for the Giants and become a starter. DJ Davidson pan out, become a starter. But generally speaking, this Giants front seven, major upgrades this offseason. I think that they're much better off going into this year compared to where they were going into last year. Brian Burns really stands out. And again, it's just that domino effect, that trickle-down effect from adding in some top-end talent in the pass rushing group. It's going to make all of the rest of those guys play at a higher level, facing easier matchups, and having better performances due to the guys that they're playing alongside. And Shane Bowen's defensive scheme, I think, caters quite well to what the Giants are trying to do here in their personnel. They're going to have more 4-man rushes. They're going to have 4 down linemen and a 4-3 defensive front. This is going to create a lot of pass rushing opportunities for Kayvon Thibodeau that he didn't have last year. He's finally going to be able to just put his hand in the dirt and go one-on-one against an offensive tackle and just beat him down for an entire game. That's what you want to see from Kayvon. I don't want him to have 85 dropbacks in coverage this year like he did last year. I thought that was too many. 50 is one thing, 85 is another. And having 5 would probably be ideal. Keep those guys pass rushing on a down-to-down basis, and I think you're going to see a much improved Giants front seven this upcoming season. And hey, the Giants, we've talked a lot about the lack of depth that they have in the secondary. Having a really good front seven can mask a lot of the lack of talent that you have in the secondary. When you've got talent up front, pass rushing the quarterback, getting the ball out of his hands quickly, or even plugging the run, forcing the quarterback to make some throws, all of that helps your secondary out, makes the secondary play at a much higher level as well. So, Alex, any closing thoughts on this Giants front seven? Maybe the way that it will affect the rest of the way the defense plays?
I think this front seven, when you have a young secondary like the one that we do right now, it is imperative that they step up, right? Like if this pass rush isn't great, this secondary is going to be shredded, right? And that's kind of like what I'm most worried about. McKinney's gone, Jackson's gone, you got Banks being elevated. You don't have a CB2, you have a rookie free safety. Like if anyone goes down, you're in big trouble. That secondary is a project at the moment. You're a developmental project. And for what it's worth, like that is not the sign of a team that's gonna win games in 2024. You look at really good teams, they have really good secondaries. You look at the Chiefs, L'Jarius Sneed and all the guys that they have there, it's like, all right, like they're ready to win a chip. Their defense is good enough. You look at the Bills, they got shredded because they had no freaking secondary, and they were all old and injured. You look at the 49ers, good secondary. Like good teams have good secondaries. The Giants have one that we just don't know what they're gonna be. So I think that this year is going to be very much about getting reps and experience for them as starters. 2025 is when I see them taking a big step forward, especially because I think they'll have a lot of money to spend and maybe go out and get a veteran free agent, like a big name that can really round things out. Tyler Nubin will be in his second year. Obviously you still have Pinnock on a very, very affordable deal. So I think this year is going to be very much like trial by fire for the secondary. But the front seven there, the defensive line is going to be essential to helping them hold their ground, helping them develop and not get the brakes beaten off of them, right? Like, I think it really is going to be about building confidence for them and not about being elite, but just building that confidence week by week, getting better every single week. And that defensive front putting pressure on quarterbacks, allowing the defenders to get interceptions and make plays on passes. That's going to be huge for their growth. Not just mentally, but also physically. So, that's kind of where I stand. Some people think this seems like ready to go, ready to win. I think that we still have a couple weaknesses. Secondary is one of them. But the front seven could do them a lot of favors. We have a lot of those guys locked in on long-term deals, so we're very, very happy about that. But the secondary can take some big steps forward in terms of just getting experience, growing, and then compounding that with maybe a big free agent signing next year, which I do think could be in the cards.
100% agreed. I'm hoping that this Giants team continues to build year by year, but they need to take a big step forward on both sides of the ball this upcoming season to lay down the foundation for this rebuild and continue the progress forward, because obviously the Giants, new regime stepped in 2022, found some early success with a postseason win. Next season, quite a disappointment. Let's get back to our winning ways, New York Giants. That's what I'm hoping for this upcoming season. And if the Giants do get back to their winning ways, you best believe the defensive line and front seven will be a big part of that. So that pretty much wraps up this discussion, though. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss the episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening to Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, we'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.
Perfect.